You don't waste time when you could be studying Torah. Hi, Jen Goldman Wetzler. I haven't seen you in so long.
No, hi.
Hi, good to have you.
Great to have you too. I'm still
Sorry,
half
one
asleep,
second.
but I'm
What?
very glad to be with you.
All right.
1 minute.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. We have to make it. Do we make a time? Yeah. We did. Okay. Asher Chaim. Thank you. Oh, wow. The machine stable? We replaced the surface like weeks ago. I didn't know. Wow. Going to be stable. This is a milestone in the life of Romemu. What do you think? Okay. All right, everybody. Oh,
Which is Nikki's seat.
Nikki's.
That's it's just you.
So, what's
Nikki.
okay, everybody in cacophony. On the screen.
Adonai, Eloheinu, melech haolam.
Hashem, Yeshanu,
Yishmanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok divrei Torah.
Nai, our master, ruler of our world, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to soak in your words. Amen, amen. Wow, big parsha today, or not big, but powerful. Kedoshim, all about holiness. So there's so much in this parsha, and today I'm going to, Mark, want to say something? Mark Horn.
So sometimes when you go to Sefaria, the source sheet has on the left-hand side, it says, print or download, and sometimes it does not, so I can't. And I'm wondering, today is one of those days that it doesn't say print or download. Yeah.
I think I can solve that problem.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for telling me. I'm going to solve it in a minute. I think it's because I didn't make it public. So I'll make it public. I think that's the answer, but we shall see. Okay, welcome, Ellen. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Nikki. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Let's see if I can solve Mark's problem. So today is all about love and the challenges of loving your neighbor and loving the stranger. Hold on 1 second. So Mark, I'm now changing this to public. And you tell me now if you can download. Oops, sorry. Sorry, just 1 second. Put this back to where it was. Here we go. And Mark, if you can't, then I don't know what the problem is if you can't. Hi, welcome.
You want to sit here? You want to sit here? Okay. I know.
Okay.
Like to sit there. Right.
So the spiritual practice of loving neighbors and strangers, Parshat Kedoshim. So for those of you who were in Beit Midrash, hold on, everybody. If you can keep it down and not, oh wait, thank you. So a few of these verses will be a repeat of what we did in Beit Midrash, but mostly not, or at least there'll be lots of new material. So we're going to start at the beginning because I think the beginning is really important. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Adonai spoke to Moses saying, Daber el kol adat bnei Israel. and Kedoshim to you. Kadosh Ani Elohim. So Adonai spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the whole entire Israelite community and say to them, or congregation, and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, your God, Adonai, am holy. So note a few things. One is, it's not just Daber el b'nei Israel, it's Daber el kol adat b'nei Israel. So it's not just speak to Israel, it's speak to the whole congregation. And we'll see a Rashi about that in a moment. And also, Israel shall be holy, right? Kedoshim to you, you shall be holy. It's an injunction, but it's in the future. And then God says, Ki kadosh ani, because I am holy now. So I didn't include this on the page, but I was just talking to my chavruta about it. Sharon, are you here? You're not here, then I'll assume Sharon's not here at the moment. And Yeshayahu Leibovich, who was a very iconoclastic 20th century commentator, Torah, sure, is he? It's not still. Anyone know? All right, if anyone knows, put in the chat. And he said that Korach's mistake, so Korach was the great rebel in the book of Numbers, was believing that he was already holy. But here it says, Kedoshim to you. You have to become holy through all these acts, right? So your holiness, human holiness is in the future. God's holiness is in the present. Right? So it's a mistake of hubris because Korach said to Moshe, this whole congregation is holy. So why are you sort of the boss of us? Right? That's basically Korach's complaint. But Yeshayahu Leibovich says, well, to think that you're already holy is a mistake of hubris. So we'll keep that in mind and see how other commentators relate to that question. Like, are we holy now? Or do we become holy through these acts? If we become holy through these acts, do we become permanently holy or temporarily holy in those moments? Right? Holiness sort of concealed is revealed. Yes, Amy.
From my comparative religion, because I studied so much of the Kashmir Shaivism Tantra, and in that tradition, there are people who are Anupaya, they're just holy now, no teacher. Then there's this level, these three levels that you just spoke about are sort of mapped out within that tradition as well. People who can get like a Shaktipat and become whole, enlightened, and then ones who the rest of us have to study, and it becomes in the future.
The three levels are people who are naturally holy.
Yeah, they're just kind of born that
and
way.
Then people who can become holy
very quickly through just sort of a
right. That's actually one category I didn't mention. What I was saying is that these mitzvot can help us achieve a temporary state of holiness. But it sounds like the second category is you become holy, period.
Yeah.
And number three is
study with it over time through learning and knowledge and practice.
Achieve holiness
and you would be through that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever get there, but you're.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really interesting. Hi, Tony. Good morning. Shabbat shalom. Okay, so let's see what Rashi says on the first verse. 11th century French commentator and also vintner. Daber el kol adat b'nei Israel. Milamed shene'emra parsha zu b'hakel. B'nei sherov gufei Torah tzuyim bo. This is the addition of the words kol adat. So that's Rashi's question. I was going up, going to Yeshiva. We always ask, like, what's bothering Rashi? So what's bothering Rashi here is the addition of these words, all of the congregation, which is not usually in this formulation, daber el b'nei Israel. Speak to the children of Israel. It teaches us that this section was proclaimed in full assembly because most of the fundamental teachings of the Torah are dependent on it. So it's that important. So in a way, it's like kind of like another Sinai moment. I'm going to skip number 3 for a second, go to number 4. So this is from a piece by Rabbi Daniel Klein, who is the dean of Hebrew College Rabbinical School. And he says, biblical scholars tells us that this part of the book of Leviticus was written by a new priestly school. Some people call this priestly school H as opposed to P. Within P, H within P. P is the priestly authors at the end of the 8th century BCE, as Jacob Milgram, who was a 20th century Bible scholar and wrote multiple volumes on Leviticus, writes in Leviticus, a book of ritual and ethics. This school concerned itself with the people at large and had a revolutionary goal: the creation of an egalitarian society in which everyone has access to the holy, right? Because before this, we talked about the Mishkan and the priests and how they navigate the holy, and the people could bring offerings, but they couldn't go into the inner precincts, and has the burden to live a life that accords with holiness. Amen. Amen. Okay, so now this really number three, source number 3, really gets us to the heart of the dialectic here, or which for me is the dialectic, and I'll explain in a minute. So we're just told we shall be holy, and immediately in number 3, right, Leviticus 19:3, it says, Ish imo ba'aviv tira'u ve'et shabdotai tishmoru ani Adonai Elohim. You shall each revere your mother and your father and keep my Sabbath. I, Adonai, am your God. So we're told to be holy, and then immediately, I feel at least, that holiness is tested. Honor your mother and father. Where is your sense of holiness, or your sense of being the best self you can be, right? Tested the most. For me, one of the places was with my parents, right? It was very hard to act in a holy way with them for all kinds of reasons, which I won't go here. And it's interesting. Oh my God, Stephen Rudin is here. Stephen.
Hey, Stephen.
Shabbat Shalom, Stephen. Good to have you here. And it's interesting that that's paired with Shabbat. And what the rabbis come to tell us about this combination of being in awe. Sorry, I'm just going to tell people in the hall. I can't. There's another program going on. It's not, there are too many more kids. It's not a possibility. It's not in the range of possible. Okay. So is that if your mother and father tell you not to keep Shabbat, then you actually you can't listen. There are limits to how you honor your mother. Okay, so I'm going to ask people in the room, please, to raise your hands on one community of students, and have the Zoom people hear as much as possible what's going on. So Wendy, did you want to say something?
Yeah. You're allowed to disobey your mother and father if it's for health reasons. And either their health or your health.
Cool.
Good. Tony.
I'm wondering.
Oh, wait, hold on one second. We have a sound quality issue. The rabbi's sound quality, I think that's me, is lower quality today for me. I wonder if it's the same for others. Okay, is it? Raise your hands. So it sounds like it's not great today.
Yeah,
Caroline.
the audio's going a bit in and out. I'm currently messaging Eden about it. Yes.
Okay, Amy, can you do me a huge favor and find Eden? Calling on you because you were willing a minute.
Yeah, I'm certain.
Okay, so if anything, we're going to try to troubleshoot. If anything needs to be repeated, just raise your hands and I'll do my best. Okay, Tony.
You said you seem to equate being my best self with being holy, and I want to call that a little into question. And I happen to have opened this book, The Buddha Meets Socrates. And it says in the Buddhist mode, compassion is recognition of the non-individual Buddha nature. All sentient beings share. So if it's a team sport, then a focus on my being my best self may fall short and actually even block the recognition of the one love that is really holy.
You know, did you say that? Because as I said, being my best self, I wondered, is that actually,
We wonder together.
we did, is that actually related to holy or not? But I would say that there was something about the connection that was profoundly disrupted.
Yes. I would also say, Rabbi,
Wait. So does that feel like it connects more to the question of holiness?
does what? That the connection.
That I
is
felt like the
disrupted?
connection, right? The sense of oneness was
Yeah,
disrupted.
yes,
Okay, so
In other words, holiness has everything to do with connectedness and
good.
our focus, my focus on taking care of me or even being my best self may block that.
I really like your redirect here.
And the other thing I would say is, relying as we all can and might on Rebbe Leonard Cohen, he sings "Ring the bells that can be rung," which is different from being our best self. It's because that being our best self suddenly brings into the room perfectionistic strive. So ring the bells that can be rung as an individual, but also open to the whole.
Okay, I love that redirect. And I agree that I can get kind of, and I think as a society, it's this kind of cultural trope that we get hung up on being our best selves as opposed to focus on what does it mean to connect, which actually might allow us to bring more imperfection to bear than perfection. Do you?
No mud, no
Thank you.
lotus.
What?
No mud, no lotus.
No, okay, beautiful. Do you have your hand up, Amy? No, okay. Okay, I don't see any other hands, so welcome on. I'm gonna go on in that case. And I want to name that for so many people here and elsewhere, that, oh good, better sound. That better? People are saying better. That still? People are saying it is better.
I think it's currently sounding okay. Yes.
I want to name, because not better, Jen Goldman Leffler says. Still fine, Barbara Cecil says.
We can't be our perfect self. It might not be something then that could be fixed on this end.
Okay, this is gonna be as good as we get for today. So if you can't hear me or someone in the room, please let me know when we will repeat till everybody gets it.
We do sign language.
What?
We do sign language.
I don't do. Oh, okay. Want to name that for many people here and elsewhere that the challenge of respecting one's parents is a profound challenge, all kinds of reasons, especially before the experience of abuse. Profound challenge. So I just want to name that, and here it is in the Torah, that profound challenge. Okay, I'm gonna go. Okay, so do this. All right, so now let's go to the passage which leads to, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself, like yourself. We'll look at that question in a minute. Welcome to them. Okay, so it starts with, or at least I chose it to start with. Lo telech rachil be'afa, lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, ani Adonai. So do not deal basely. So it's literally, don't walk around rachil, I guess, as a tale bearer. It's really know what the root means, and it seems like this translator JPS doesn't know either. Amongst members of your people. And then, right, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, and don't stand on your brother's blood, or do not profit. Literally is do not stand, do not profit, by the blood of your fellow. And then here's that stamp, Ani Adonai, right? And again, this Ani Adonai is repeated throughout the parsha, and we'll see it again in a minute, and then another minute, another minute. And I think I said this already, it's mentioned 18 or 19 times in this parsha, which is extraordinary. And one scholar says that Ani Adonai is short for this. He kadosh Ani Adonai Elohim. So that's interesting. Whatever it is, there's something about this specific instruction or injunction that brings out Ani Adonai, right? I am God. So that's one question. The other question is, how does walking around as a talebearer, literally walking around, connect to being profiting or being responsible for the blood of your, right? So that's a question. Why are these two in the same verse? Why are these two right next to each other? Vicky, is that a hand?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, good.
Well, you can, walking around as a talebearer, you can slander your brother.
For your own harm.
And so it's sibling rivalry following the injunction to honor one's parents.
We're not in honor one's parents was earlier.
Yeah. Well, the injunction to obey. But you can walk around slandering your brother and in that sibling rivalry. I was thinking of Jacob and Esau.
Okay. Okay.
Well, you can.
What wrong?
Oh, I thought you were stopping.
No, I was calling
You could slander anyone, like your
You
brother.
can
in a
slander
metaphorical
anyone,
setting.
right?
You can do it for your own ends,
right.
and it could lead to harm for that other person.
And it could be to harm, and it could pave the way, right? If you actually pull down if you degrade someone enough, or someone's reputation enough, it actually could lead to bullying, it could lead to violence, it could even in the sense, or suicide, it could even, we talk politically, lead to someone's murder, like Rabbi, right? You degrade them enough, and then what happens? Which is why, politicians in our country also can be endangered by certain kinds of demonization. Let me just finish this little thing, Jay, and then I'll call you. Okay. Lotus not at achicha bilvavecha. Don't hate your brother in your heart. Ocheach tochiach et amitecha velo tisa alav beit. So this is rich verse and says a lot in a few words. Don't hate your fellow person in your heart, right? So we all know about like our secret resentments, right? That we keep close. And instead, right? So what's the connection with the next piece? Rebuke them. Tell them what's on your heart. Tell them what's on your mind. What's going on, right? If there's problematic behavior and you're suffering, or you see it and someone else is suffering, tell them. And it's so hard to do that. But I think it's almost like a secret pleasure to keep one's resentments, right, in one's heart and walk around with them. And somehow enact, like, it's a kind of like secret but ineffectual revenge. And then finally, lo tisa alav chet. Incur no guilt on their account, because if you don't tell them what's going on, but if you tell them what's going on, then maybe they'll stop it. But if you don't tell them, then you're now sort of you're complicit in someone, because you're not telling them that it's a problem. So you've sort of joined in their action with your silence. And then finally, lo tikom v'lo titor et b'nei amecha v'ahavta re'acha kamocha ani Adonai. Verse 18 in number 5.
Okay.
You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against members of your people, which feels like it's also a natural outgrowth of this like silent, sort of simmering resentment. Instead, right? Come over, love your fellow Israelite as yourself. I am Adonai. And there's God's stamp again. I am Adonai. Right. So what's the connection? So the connection could be, right? Love your fellow person because they too are created in the image of God. They too partake of divinity, right? And you can parse this a little bit differently, right? V'ahavta l'reacha, love your fellow person, kamocha, because they are like you. They are like you, right? And then, ani Adonai, I'm Adonai behind you and behind them, right? I'm the unifying, this divinity is the unifying factor. Thank you, Tom. Okay, Jay's waiting. And then we're going to go to Deborah in the room and see if there are other hands.
I want to make a very simple point, although I'm a little confused because I think the link in the chat is different than what's shared. So there may be two different documents. But in any case, very, very simply, if we take a step back, and I think it holds in parallel to your B'Tselem Elohim macro, which is simply we're talking about an ethical moral code. And what is the basis of morality? The basis of morality is understanding that your actions have consequences for other people. And so you need to be aware of that. And I think that's true in each one of those examples, and also connects to B'Tselem Elohim, because another almost psychological way of implementing that is that your actions have consequences for yourself. So I'm sorry, the l'reecha thing. So that consequences have actions have consequences for yourself. So if you have a degree of empathy to say, okay, yeah, this affects me, well, how does it affect the other person? So I think this is almost like a bedrock of morality, the simple notion that your actions have consequences on other people.
Yes, and that impact limits or should limit your actions.
Absolutely, it would for yourself. Like if you
it's an exercise in humility.
Yes, exactly. And it's the same calculus as understanding, hey, what I'm going to do is affect me. Well, what I'm going to do is also going to affect someone else.
I think you could say the whole Torah on one foot.
You could say this is the way I'm saying the whole Torah on one foot. And what's interesting, and this is not exactly true, but I'll say it anyway, which is Leviticus is the middle of the Torah, right? And what's the middle of the Torah? It's the holiness code, but it's not precise. It's not exactly precisely the middle, but it's
Even better.
It's a little a little misaligned. So yeah, this is it's unbelievable, right? Okay, I feel like I'm missing a lot in the chat, but I think I have to let it go. All right.
I just wanted to say one fast thing I read yesterday, that if you don't think the person can hear you or change their action, you're not obligated to tell them what's in your heart, because that could trigger a whole stream of backlash. I personally am experiencing that right now, and I know this person will just backlash.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that is true.
So true.
So Tony, hold back, Tony. Hold back. Okay, so Devar, absolutely. So I want to say two things. So I always ask the question, or as often as I can possibly. My practice is, will my speech be helpful? Sometimes, and I'm not saying this in your case at all, because I know sometimes it's impossible to talk to somebody. Sometimes I think we hide behind that impossibility. So can we?
Sorry.
Can we, how much can we push ourselves to say? And also, and I quoted this the other day, but I think wrongly. Emily Dickinson says, "Tell all the truth, but tell it slant."
Tell it slant.
So tell it slant. So sometimes we can get truth in, if it's
Get in.
what?
Skillful means.
Skillful, well-dressed, so to speak, very gentle. You can come to somebody and say, "Oh, I'm having a problem. I'm struggling with this," when you really mean to say, "You're killing me with your day." Okay, lots of people have their hands up. online, in the room. Hold on, let me just figure out what that. 1 second. Gallery, okay. So I'm going to go to, who wants to speak in the room? Okay, I'm gonna go to you. What's your name? I haven't.
Like-
What?
Like,
I could.
when you were saying about do not hate your kinsfolk in your heart,
Yeah.
and then you said you should tell them. I don't see that in the Torah here where it says you should tell them.
It says Hokea Topia. The next phrase is Hokea Topia. Reprove. That's where it says. Reprove.
Okay.
Number 5. Do you see that?
Reprove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it says reprove your neighbor now. Is that right?
It says, yes,
Yeah.
reprove your kin. Says you shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. Reprove your kin.
And you should reprove and you should reprove.
Okay.
Alex,
Just a quick point.
please.
Saying goes that resentment or hate is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. You're actually burning yourself. It's internal, and the other person has no idea.
Yeah, I love that. Did anyone online hear that? So resentment, especially simmering resentment, right, is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies, but you're the only one who gets poisoned. That's very powerful. Okay, I'm gonna call on a bunch of people online. And I'm gonna call on people who haven't spoken yet. So, and then I'm gonna go on. So, Paul, Ronnie, Paul, Amy, Paul Solomon in Rebellion in Jerusalem.
Yay.
About shalom all. I don't know if people want to spend time in this, but at the very beginning of the parsha, and the name of the parsha is Kedoshim, and I found myself last night. Strangely enough, I was davening Mincha Mariv, Kabbalat Shabbat, the whole thing with my cousin down the street, and I saw that he stood to say Kaddish, and as we walked to his home afterwards, he explained that he's saying Kaddish for 5 Kedoshim, 5 soldiers who were killed in recent months. And what surprised me even more was that he gave a little shiur towards the end of our dinner. There were about 12 people there. And he went into detail, a certain amount of detail, about how Kedoshim are handled very differently in Tahara, in burial. And that these people were killed, whether they were at the Nova Festival, October 7, or whether it was soldiers, people who are killed because they are Jewish, they already have sacred status. And it shocked me to hear that these people, nothing is done to their bodies, and they're buried in whatever clothing they had on because the state at which they died was sacred, was holy.
So, Paul, thank you for contributing that. That's like a whole special category in halakha of Jewish martyrs. And we're not going to go into that now because it's not my topic today, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you for giving us a little bit of your life in Israel. Okay, Ronnie Sharfman.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. I don't know if I'm troubled, if that's the right word, but I think we need to consider that the Torah is actually talking about intra-tribal ethics, right? Israelites, kinfolk, and when you explained it, Rabbi Diane, you kept saying people. And I think our contemporary sensibility wants to universalize that ethics to everybody, that is how we should act with everybody. But we need to remember the Torah was written a very long time ago and for a specific group of people. Yes. And what it is actually saying talks about other Israelites. So I just want.
Absolutely, there are internal ethics and external ethics. We are going to get to loving the stranger, but what you just said is an important corrective in terms of the context of the Torah. Absolutely. Nikki, I already have my line up, so you're going to have to wait till later. I'm sorry. Okay. Paul Ullman.
Just to underline what Ronnie just said, and I completely agree that God is speaking to the Israelites. It's not a universalist message yet. And there's a reason for that. Leviticus speaks to laws, and now God understands that there's a cultural project that needs to be built upon too. In order for the tribe to survive, there are certain cultural norms. And it also, I think, is important for us to understand that it's part of the covenant. We are being given a special responsibility to act in a particular way. And if we don't, we're going to lose the land. It's not just us being nice to each other. This is a serious and perpetual burden that we have to shoulder.
Yeah, and it's not only about the land. So, Paul, I think you really helping us put this in long-term context. But if we go back to Abraham, right, what's the project, right? So first, the first 11 chapters of Genesis, all about God's relationship to humanity as a whole. Didn't work. For whatever reason, it did not work. Evil, destruction, flood, Tower of Babel, all kinds of problems. And then God decides to focus in on Abraham and the creating of an Israelite family. And the mission, as God gives it to Abraham, is you shall be a blessing, and ultimately your people will become a blessing to the entire world. So here the instructions are to become a blessing. But it's sort of like it's almost like a coffee filter, right? It's you go through the Israelite family, that blessing, right? The universal part of this, and I'm not trying to make it to wipe away the particularity, but the universal part of it, and this relates to Jay saying our behavior impacts others. So as a nation, we are to be holy, and that blessing is supposed to reverberate to the entire, to other people. Okay, Amy, and then any other people. Amy's last up now. We're going to continue with our text because we've got some important stuff, and we'll come back to the people who are waiting. Yes. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning. I want to address something you mentioned, the differentiation between I am the Lord and I am the Lord your God, which both statements are mentioned 10 times in this portion. I'm quoting you from Steinsaltz. I am the Lord is God as the commander who is all-knowing, and one must act with awareness of this truth. It is applied to matters of ethics or interpersonal relationships. I am the Lord your God is God's particular authority over Israel as a king, and emphasizes the establishment of laws and statutes. So I just wanted to mention, both are mentioned 10 times, but I want to say really briefly, for 36 years, I've been angry with someone. And last Friday, I saw him, and usually when I see him, I walk out of the room, but I saw him, I plopped myself down next to him, and I brought out all the issues, and I found out that he wasn't responsible for what I was mad at him for 36 years. And so, sometimes it pays to challenge the person you're angry with.
Amy, that's amazing. Thank you.
Have a good week.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Who's talking, Rhoda?
Oh yeah, I can't seem to get my hand raised. Is it time to speak? I can wait.
Is it directly related, Rhoda? Because I know you've been waiting for. Okay,
yes. It's about Roberta and other people know about nonviolent communication, which I've been involved in for about 20 years, and founded by Marshall Rosenberg. You will always get some unpleasant feedback if you tell people you did this and you did that. So when you speak from your heart, the way is to say, I feel this way when I heard this, or or what I need, and approach it that way. And it's helpful.
Thank you, Rhoda. I have a story about that. So recently my daughter was very mad at me because she thought I said I was going to do something, which I didn't say I was going to do. It doesn't matter. We had a misunderstanding. And she said, I'm really upset. I'm trying to really hold my anger. I'm going to use I statements. And she said, I hate you.
That's not the one.
I've been waiting to start a sermon that way. So you've got a preview.
No, that is a nonviolent communication.
Right?
You say thank you for sharing.
That's violent communication.
I just laughed and appreciated her sense of humor.
Oh, it was direct anyhow.
Okay, everybody, back to the text. Okay, good. So here's Rashi on Leviticus 19:18. You shall not take revenge. And I love this Rashi. And we also did it in Beit Midrash. So again, I'm sorry we're doing it here. Okay, so it says, Lo tikom. Amar lo. So we're giving examples of what does it mean not to revenge. And then it's giving also sorry, let me take you back to the verse for a second. So it says, Lo tikom v'lo titor. You shall not 18, you shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge. So what's the difference? So Rashi is telling us the difference. Why is there this repetition here? It must mean something. And Rashi is giving us very specific examples. Amar lo, hashileni migalcha. Amar lo, lav machar. Amar lo, hashileni mikardumcha. Amar lo, eini mashilcha. Kederach shelo hisheltani. Zehi nikim. So if one says to another, lend me your sickle, and he replies no, and the next day the latter says then to a former, lend me your hatchet, and he retorts, I'm not going to lend it to you, just as you refuse to lend me your sickle. This is avenging. In other words, if someone's not generous with you, you're not going to be generous with them. Okay, so you're letting their behavior define your behavior. And then what, on the other hand, is a grudge? Zohi nikima. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Ezahu nitira. Amarlo, hashileni et kardumcha. Amarlo, la. Machar amarlo, hashileni migalcha. Amarlo, helecha. Eni kemotcha. Shelo hishaltani. Zohi nitira. Shenoter eva bilibo. Apapi she'eno no kam. So, if one says to another, lend me your hatchet, and he replies, no. And the next day he says to him, lend me your sickle, and he replies, here it is. I am not like you, because you would not lend it to me. And this is called bearing a grudge, because he retains enmity, as Alex was saying, in his heart, although he does not actually avenge. So, oh my God, this is really beautiful. So Chaim Vital, who in the room would like to read this in a loud voice so people on Zoom can hear you? It's number 8. Loud, dramatically.
I will.
Robin.
Before beginning the order of prayer in synagogue, a person must accept the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. You should have the intention to love every Jew as you love your own life, for this is the way your prayer will be bound together with the prayers of all Israel, ascending to heaven and bearing fruit. Especially when a group studies Torah together in love, all the members should have the intention of binding themselves together, considering themselves as limbs of a single organism. This is especially true when people attain knowledge and insight to understand their fellows on the level of the soul. If one of the members suffers some pain, all the members must join themselves to their suffering, whether it regards physical illness or children, God forbid, and pray on their behalf. In all your prayers or behaviors or speech, you should bind your comrades to yourself. My teacher of blessed memory exhorted me very strongly regarding loving all the comrades in our fellowship.
So that kind of speaks for itself. It's really beautiful. I'm sorry, I forgot to look up the years and place of Chaim Vital. Can someone put that in the chat? I'm sure someone here knows. And I thought it was a beautiful conversation with Alice Walker's Color Purple. And she says, my first step from the old white man was trees. The old white man as God, the old white man as God. Then air, then birds, then other people. But one day when I was sitting quiet and feeling like a motherless child, which I was, it came to me, that feeling of being part of everything, not separate at all. I knew that if I cut a tree, my arm would bleed. Laughed, I run all around the house. I knew just what it was. In fact, when it happens, you can't. Because ultimately, and this goes back to what Tony was saying about connection and holiness being all about feeling connected and being connected, right? It's an embodied experience, right? We can learn this on the page, but when is it that we actually experience holiness? And when do we experience our interconnectedness with others? So, one of the reasons I do this is, study and learn with people. It creates incredible connection, community, and also vertically backwards in time to our ancestors and their wisdom, their voices. Okay, I want to get to. I'm just thinking about what we should do. Okay, so I'm going to do this and then go to strangers because that's really important. So in the beginning, hold on here. In the beginning, God created human beings in God's image, and in Genesis 5, there's a reference back to that, and it says that Sefer Toldot Adam B'Yom Baro Elohim Adam B'Demut Elohim Asa. This is the record of Adam's line, and big genealogy comes after this, but this is recalling the beginning in order to go forwards. When God created humankind, it was made in the likeness of God. And then it says Zachar and Nekeva Bira'am, male and female, were they created? Yivarech otam, Yikva et shamam Adam. And God blessed them and called their name Dam in the day, B'yom Hibara'am, in the day that God created. So it's strangely egalitarian, and it's inclusive of male and female, which makes one think, but this is a different shiur, a different study session, that there was male and female in God's self, God's self. Okay, so now there is this famous midrashic commentary on this, and also the notion of loving your neighbor as yourself. Rabbi Tanhuma b'Shem Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Mineach ben Azai Omer. So, Zeh Sefer Toldot Adam, Zeh Klal Gadol b'Torah. So basically, Ben Azai says this is the book of the descendants of Adam, and this verse represents the central tenet of the Torah, right? That we're all created in the image of God. And the commentary here, which is not in the original, as it teaches that all people are created in the likeness of God, and therefore they should treat each other with respect and consideration. And this is the basic tenet on which the rest of the Torah is based. But Rabbi Akiva has a different verse. Rabbi Akiva Omer v'ahavta l're'acha kamocha. Rabbi Akiva says you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But that verse represents the central tenet of the Torah, as it teaches that you should not say, since I have been disparaged, let someone else be disparaged along with me. Since I was cursed, let someone else be cursed along with me. Shelo tomar o'il v'nitbazeti yitbazeh chaveri imi o'il v'nikalalti yikalel chaveri imi. So that's hard, right? Because if you've been cursed and despised and degraded, right? You're likely, because you've sort of soaked that up, right, in your experience, and even not only cognitively, but unconsciously, and it's sort of in your, like, lodges itself in your body, you are likely to do that to somebody else, right? But Rabbi Akiva is suggesting that loving somebody like yourself sort of interrupts that pattern. And maybe impossibly so. Let me finish this. Amar Rabbi Tanhuma im asita ken da lami atan mivakzeh b'demut Elohim asav. Rabbi Tanhuma said, if you do that, know who it is that you are disgracing in the likeness of God. God made him and her for them. So, in other words, when we disgrace each other, what we're doing is really ultimately. Amy, you had a quick question?
I feel like it's I mean, why, in my ignorance, do Jewish people have this reputation that they're vengeful, and then Christ comes along and creates this love your neighbor as yourself, when really it's right here.
Right. Love is all over the Jewish tradition. You know, sibling rivalry, and Christians want to sort of differentiate themselves from the Israelite Jewish tradition, saying that's about law and we're about love. Ain't true.
Yeah.
It ain't true. That's all I have to say.
Truth to it.
No, that's not historically what happened.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, everybody.
I knew I didn't.
Hold on, everybody. Okay, so Tony says there's some truth to it. Hold on, Tony, hold on. And Tomas, who's not spoken yet, wants to clear the record. So since Tomas knows much more about this than I do, at least on some level, I'm gonna let Tomas.
No, I mean, it's just, it's very helpful to think of Christianity or Catholicism merely as a radically successful heretical Jewish sect with the same basic principles. Chief among them, love your neighbor as yourself. And the reason why that principle became associated with Christianity is it was so contrary to the prevailing values, the cultural and political system at the time, yes, which was the Roman ethos, in which the highest virtue was not compassion. Highest virtue was stoicism and noble suffering, and just the ability to take it. Whereas in this heretical Judaism called Christianity, the highest virtue is not to hand out suffering in the first place. And so the construction of Christianity as this religion of compassion makes sense only within the cultural and political context in which it first appeared, which was this Roman world. But any construction of Christianity as a compassionate religion and Judaism is not merely anachronistic anti-Semitism.
Thank you. Okay.
If I could just ask one question to Tomas. Isn't it also in the response to not only the Romans, but also to some of the Pharisees and how they were practicing the religion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go back to the topic. This is so interesting, and I appreciate Tomas's point, and we're gonna go on. And yes, Jay pointed out that Shai Held has a new book about love and Jewish tradition. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So Rabbi Akiva, it's interesting. I think Ben Azai picks the kind of almost like static fact that we're all created in the image of God. And Rabbi Akiva picks, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, because it's more practical. Like that's what we need to do day in and day out, with the fact that we were all created in the image of God. Okay, so I'm going to skip Ramban, even though it's really important, and I'm going to even skip Rav Kook, because I want to get to love of the stranger, which I discovered can be called xenophilia, which I love. That xenophilia is actually part of the Hebrew Bible. And this responds to Ronnie's comment before, right? Yes, we were talking about intergroup relations, and here's the extra group relations. V'chi yagor itcha ger b'artzochem. When strangers reside with you in your land, lo tonu ota, you shall not wrong. It actually says him. Ke'ezrach mikem yeh lachem ager agar item. Lo kamocha he gerim hayitim be'eretz Mitzrayim and Yadonai. The stranger who reside with you shall be to you as your citizens, right? Not different, the same. You shall love each one as yourself, right? It mirrors the other injunction about loving your neighbor as yourself. Why? For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Again, and I don't know. And I don't know your God, the one who took you out of Egypt. And it says many other places. So don't forget, right, that you were a stranger in Egypt. Amen. Amen. Okay, so Nikki, you've been waiting.
Well, I'm waiting for this really.
You waited for this. You've been waiting since Tuesday night. No, because she was in Beit Midrash and she didn't get her question answered. At the end of it, she's going, what's hate? Okay, so let me read one more thing. And does someone on Zoom want to read number 15?
This is Mark. I'll do it.
Great, Mark. Thank you so much.
This is Rabbi Jonathan Klieger.
Yeah.
When we hear love your neighbor as yourself, we generally think of neighbor as referring to the entire human family. The Torah, however, clearly considers two separate categories of people, neighbors and strangers, both of whom we need to treat with thoughtful care. I find the Torah's classification to reflect a much more nuanced and accurate representation of human nature than any contemporary platitude about how we just need to love everyone. For in fact, we do not automatically treat a stranger the way we treat our neighbor. This is a moral calculus in treating one's neighbor well. You want your neighbor to treat you well too. This is a basic social contract among people sharing life in a community. It is in everyone's self-interest to behave well towards each other. Also, to put it bluntly, everyone prefers to hang out with their friends. The stranger is by definition someone in whom we have no investment. There is no incentive of self-interest to make us want to turn to the stranger, to get to know them or assist.
So I was studying this morning with my chavruta, and if she's not here, I will say a few things that she said, some challenges to this. First of all, we do have an investment in strangers. Yeah. Like, I don't want homeless people in our neighborhood, not only because I want the neighborhood to be cleaned up, but because it degrades all of our lives, right? To have people who are suffering in our midst in that way. So I certainly have an interest in the investment. And she also said, which is really interesting, and Sharon correct me here, that what's the problem? If you have self-interest and you're doing a mitzvah because of self-interest, big deal. The mitzvah is being done. You're actually helping somebody, right? There's a practical effect in the world. Like if I am self-interested or not, and I help someone on the street, then I have someone on the street and that person's helped. That's the point. I once told the story that I held the door open for I went out of my way to hold the door open for someone who's really struggling, who's clearly sort of a marginal person in society and ill, and she didn't look around. And I was reflecting on the difference between being acknowledged and not being acknowledged. Suddenly, I reached the corner, and my doorman saw me. He was like on the street, and he saw me. He goes, I saw what you did. My father always told me, when no one's looking, do the right thing. And he gave me a big hug. And it was so sweet. And it was so sweet to be seen. Yeah. But I didn't do it to be seen, but it was so wonderful to be seen. So it's complicated, right? It's complicated. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Nikki, I'm sorry. Nikki was waiting. Nikki.
Yeah,
Nikki.
well, I don't know that we're quite ripe for this, but.
I have you right for this?
Right for this, because we're sort of beginning to talk about the stranger. And
I have one more thing about the stranger.
Okay.
So we're gonna wait because we have one more thing about the stranger.
But this is all in it's about.
No.
Why is she going first?
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna read one more thing on the
Finish, and then-
stranger and
I'm
I'll
sorry.
put Nikki and
No,
I'll.
no, no, no.
It's okay, it's okay. I'm gonna read one more decision. Grace Paley in her Midrash on happiness. Okay, Deborah, do you feel like reading that?
Okay.
Loud voice, and I know you have.
What she meant by happiness, she said, was the following. She meant having had, or continuing to have everything. By work to do, she included the important work of raising children righteously up. By righteously, she meant that along with being useful when speaking truth to the community, they must do no harm. By harm, she meant not only personal injury or to the friend, the lover, the coworker, the parent, the city, the nation, but also the stranger. She meant particularly the stranger in all her or his in his difference, who because we were strangers in Egypt, deserve special goodness for life, or at least until the end of strangeness.
Which I love, because there's some people who really strange. Not that I'm not really sure, but like there's like that person is really strange and you don't particularly want to talk to them. But think about how might you help them become more integrated? How might you help them become less strange? Right? And what does strange mean? What does strange mean? Okay, so now Nikki.
Yeah, I'm really troubled by this. I've been reading the Psalms.
You've been reading the Psalms?
I've been reading the Psalms, and it seems to me in there that there is compassion in it, but there is also a strong current of knocking the stranger out completely because of the evil the stranger wants to do to you.
Yeah.
Now, what are we supposed to do with a stranger in our midst who wants to destroy us? Do we turn the other cheek?
No. Not in Jewish tradition.
Okay, no,
absolutely
I thought not. So how would we reconcile this with the kindness towards the stranger in our midst?
The stranger in the Torah often is coupled with the widow, the orphan, the one who's disempowered, not the one who wants to destroy you. That's an enemy. That's a different thing. Not that stranger.
All right.
Enemy, stranger.
All right.
Enemy, stranger.
I got it.
Okay. Hold on.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Thank you.
All right, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I kind of, you mentioned something earlier when I had first walked in and kind of had a few thoughts that are coming together. And you were talking about Genesis and God and how God is portrayed. And it's like a culture you used the word culture. And it's like this culture of benevolence, the God and humans being benevolent.
Who said benevolent?
I'm putting
You're
that
saying
word. I'm adding word because it had prior, gods were in control. Gods were not benevolent to man pre-Torah.
Okay.
Gods were out, I don't believe they were benevolent.
Okay.
They were totally in control and man was the pawn or whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so a culture has been created with the Torah about this relationship between God and human. And a lot of the verbiage is about Israelites being your neighbor, your Israel.
Hold on, let me just make sure they're right in the.
Do you want me to talk? Oh, wait.
Hold on. Rachel? I'm good. I don't want to take this off. Oh.
It's about Israelites, the chosen. We're good to Israelites, our fellow Israel, blah, 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 and then it widens to the stranger. And I just had the thought, it's like, okay, this didn't exist before. And it's like they say you have to love yourself before you love others. How can you be kind to others before you love yourself? And so the whole Israelite piece about you have to start with yourself, then you go to your tribe. And now we're widening it out to everybody, right? We want to be kind we want to treat strangers, the total strangers, and be more and more loving. But the whole talking about like people can look at the Torah and say, well, you're just being good to other Jews. I mean, why is it so? Because it didn't exist before. And that was the bedrock. You had to first go to your poor, your neighbor, and then you could start working outwards.
I like this concentric circles. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so
One question to follow up on what Dan said, or so I just would want to know. So in the Torah before this, we have all kinds of things that talk about war, where it's a very brutal kind of war. You have to kill everybody.
Before this, after this,
children, the animals, everything. Then you have this part,
Yeah.
almost like you were saying from a totally different perspective, right? Like be kind to the stranger that was empowered on the.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, or how does how does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
To every season, there's a purpose.
Every season, okay.
These things live side by side in the Torah. They are disturbing. When there is conquest of the land, it is written that we're supposed to totally exterminate the people there.
Over and over.
It may be of some comfort to know that scholars think that actually did not happen. It's a very partial conquest, if that. Right. So Joshua is the book of total conquest. Judges is the book of little conquest here, a little conquest there, which seems to be more in line with what may have happened. But there is an injunction, and one level on which I read it, and doesn't make the disturbance go away, is that what does it mean culturally and psychologically and psychically to implement the reality of a promise? Like, what do you need to clear out of you? I don't know if that helps, and I don't know if that's just apologetics. I really don't know. So I'm even uncomfortable saying it, but I just said it. So may the jury not pay attention to it. Strike those comments. Okay.
You think that's it's a different circumstance, you behave differently.
Like people, the Torah is complicated and things stand side by side that may contradict and may not be understandable. Okay, then, and I'm going to do one more text because it really gets to the crux of the matter. Go ahead.
What I'm sort of struggling with is, or that may be helpful, is connecting this to the previous week's parsha about the goats, or what we were talking about.
The Yom Kippur rites.
Yes. Yeah. So because you're trying to keep in your head the fact that there are these lots in life, and there's this elect goat, the elect brother, and then there's the one that's cast into the wilderness. And for most of, after the temple is destroyed, like you have these different pieces of Jewish history where sometimes you're the elect and maybe you're conquering. And then for the past, more than 1,000 years, right, we've been more in the wilderness. And so I feel like we're trying to understand these rules from these different perspectives. And we're like, your position of empathy is very different depending on which goat you are at the moment.
Right, and these laws presume that you're a goat in power. Exactly, that's really important, Ben. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to the next one. Jay, I see your hand. I'm going to read the next thing, and I'll call on you if you have a brief comment, only because you've spoken about it. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just going to read this in English since we are, as I said, running out of time. So this is the Ma'or B'Shemesh. Okay. Now it's true that in order to save oneself from bad habits and a culture of corruption, one must indeed run away to backwoods and separate from the masses. But on the other hand, the only way to rise to a state of holiness is to attach oneself to people of spiritual distinction, true servants of God, joining with them in their sacred service of prayer and Torah study. Interesting. The most important rule about mitzvot is to perform them in community, right? This is the essence of Judaism. With other seekers of God, then you will be able to attain supernal holiness. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'd like to hear from all of you about that. The more people that gather together to engage in divine service, the more the supernal holiness comes to rest upon us. So I will tell you like a very brief story to illustrate this in my life. So I went on a silent retreat in January, and I thought, wow, I really reached the heights, and I came back, and there I was, right dynamics with my husband, with my kids, with my colleagues at work. I'm like, what happened to all that? And it's true. Like, you can achieve, or